Story of Raised by the Wild, Finn's Tale and Forest Legacy. The dappled sunlight filtering through the ancient canopy painted shifting patterns on Finn's upturned face as he read aloud, his young voice a cheerful melody in the hushed woods. Across from him, a massive bear with fur the color of deep earth listened with an almost human attentiveness, a low rumble occasionally vibrating in its chest. This unlikely companionship had been Finn's entire world for as long as he could remember. He had been just a babe, barely old enough to crawl, when he was found nestled near the base of the Whispering Falls by the old bear. Barnaby, as Finn had eventually named him, was no ordinary creature. His eyes held an ancient wisdom and a gentle patience that belied his formidable size. Instead of devouring the helpless infant, Barnaby had nudged him with his large snout, a soft huff escaping his nostrils. Something in the child's wide, innocent gaze had stayed the bear's paw. Barnaby had become Finn's protector, his teacher, his family. The forest was their classroom. Barnaby showed Finn which berries were sweet and which were bitter, how to track deer by the faintest of prints, and the language of the wind rustling through the leaves. Finn, in time, chatted endlessly, narrating his small discoveries, reading aloud from the tattered books Barnaby had somehow acquired over the years, remnants of a world Finn couldn't quite imagine. Years spun into a tapestry of shared sunsets and crackling fires under starry skies. Finn grew taller, his limbs lean and strong from climbing trees and traversing the forest floor. His red hair, perpetually tousled, framed a face that held the keenness of the wild and the curiosity gleaned from the worn pages of his books. Barnaby's muzzle grew flecked with silver, his movements a little slower, but his gaze remained as steady and kind as the day he found the infant by the falls. One crisp autumn morning, as Finn was sketching a soaring hawk in his worn journal, a flicker of something unfamiliar caught his eye in the distance. A thin wisp of smoke curled above the distant tree line, a stark contrast to the clean air of their forest home. A strange yearning stirred within Finn, a feeling he couldn't quite name. "Barnaby," he said, pointing towards the smoke. "What is that?" The old bear followed his gaze, his brow furrowing slightly. He rumbled low in his throat, a sound Finn had learned meant contemplation. Barnaby had always shied away from the edges of their territory, a primal fear or caution keeping him within the familiar embrace of the deep woods. I think that is where other humans live," Finn ventured, the idea both thrilling and daunting. The book spoke of cities, of bustling streets and towering buildings, a world so different from the quiet solitude he knew. Barnaby looked at Finn, his wise eyes filled with a mixture of concern and understanding. He knew this day would come. Finn was a human, and a part of him would always belong with his own kind. With a soft nudge of his massive head against Finn's shoulder, Barnaby seemed to offer his silent blessing. The journey was long and arduous. Finn, guided by the faint plumes of smoke, navigated through unfamiliar terrain. He carried a small pack filled with dried berries, a water skin, and the most precious of his books. Barnaby, despite his age, stayed by his side, his powerful presence a comforting reassurance. As they drew closer, the sounds of the forest began to mingle with unfamiliar noises, the distant clang of metal, the shouts of voices, the rumble of something large and mechanical. Finn felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. This world was nothing like the stories in his books. Finally, they reached the edge of the forest, and Finn peered out at a sprawling city. Buildings of brick and stone clawed at the sky, and a network of cobbled streets teemed with people hurrying about their lives. The air was thick with unfamiliar smells, coal smoke, cooking food, and something acrid he couldn't identify. Barnaby remained at the edge of the woods, his large form a reassuring anchor to the life Finn knew. He wouldn't venture into this strange, noisy place. With a heavy heart, Finn knew this was where their paths diverged. "Thank you, old friend," Finn whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He reached out and placed his hand on Barnaby's warm fur, the familiar texture grounding him. "You gave me a life. You are my family." Barnaby nudged him again, a soft rumble in response. His eyes seemed to say, "Go, learn, live. Tears welled in Finn's eyes as he turned towards the city, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. The sheer number of people was overwhelming. Their clothes were strange, their movements hurried, their faces etched with expressions he couldn't decipher. He felt like an alien in this concrete jungle. His first attempts at interaction were clumsy. He spoke in the quiet tones he used in the forest, and people stared at his worn clothes and the wildness in his eyes. He quickly learned that the knowledge he had gleaned from his books was different from the practicalities of this world. He didn't know how to buy food, where to find shelter, or the intricate rules that governed their interactions. Days turned into weeks, filled with hunger, confusion, and annoying loneliness. He slept in alleyways, scavenged for scraps, and was often met with suspicion and disdain. The vibrant stories he had read now seemed like a cruel mockery of this harsh reality. Just as despair began to creep in, Finn stumbled upon a small, dusty bookshop tucked away on a quiet side street. The air inside smelled of aged paper and ink, a familiar comfort in this alien world. The owner, a kind-faced woman with spectacles perched on her nose, noticed the longing in his eyes as he ran his fingers over the spines of the books. She offered him a small job, sorting shelves and sweeping floors, in exchange for food and a small room above the shop. It was a lifeline. Surrounded by books, Finn began to find his footing. He devoured every story, every piece of knowledge he could find, slowly bridging the gap between the world he knew and the one he was trying to navigate. He learned to speak in the quicker, louder tones of the city, to understand their customs, and to navigate their complex social structures. He discovered libraries, places where knowledge was freely shared, and his thirst for learning grew. Yet, despite the progress he made, a part of Finn always yearned for the quiet companionship of the forest. He often found himself gazing out at the distant green hills, remembering the feel of Barnaby's fur, the wisdom in his eyes, the shared silence under the ancient trees. Years passed. Finn grew into a young man, his wildness tempered by the experiences of the city, but never entirely extinguished. He became a scholar, his unique perspective, shaped by both the wild and the written word, offering insightful new interpretations of old texts. One day, while researching ancient maps in the city archives, Finn discovered a detailed depiction of the region surrounding his forest home. He recognized the familiar curves of the Whispering Falls, the jagged peaks of the Dragon's Tooth Mountains. And then, he saw it, a small cluster of buildings marked as Oak Haven, nestled in a valley not far from where Barnaby had found him. A surge of hope coursed through him. Oak Haven. It was a name, a place, a connection to the life he had no memory of. With newfound determination, Finn began to make preparations for a journey back. The city felt different now, no longer a daunting maze but a place he had learned to understand. He had friends, colleagues, a life of his own. But the pull of the forest, the unanswered questions of his past, and the deep bond he shared with Barnaby were too strong to ignore. The journey back was filled with a bittersweet nostalgia. Familiar landmarks triggered long-dormant memories. The scent of pine after a rain shower, the sound of a hidden stream, the feel of moss under his worn boots. Finally, he reached the edge of the forest, his heart pounding in his chest. He stepped beneath the familiar canopy, the air instantly cooler, the sounds softer. He called out, his voice a little rough after years of city living. "Barnaby, it's me, Finn." A rustling in the undergrowth, a low rumble that resonated deep within him, and then a familiar massive form emerged from the trees. Barnaby. His fur was even more silvered now, his movements slower, but his eyes, those wise, gentle eyes, lit up with recognition. A deep, heartfelt sound escaped the bear, and Finn rushed forward, burying his face in the familiar warmth of Barnaby's fur. Years melted away in that embrace, the bond between them unbroken by time or distance. He spent weeks in the forest, sharing stories of the city, listening to the rustling wisdom of the trees with Barnaby by his side. He learned that Oak Haven was a small, forgotten village, ravaged by a long-ago plague. His family had likely perished there. The knowledge was a poignant ache, a missing piece of his past finally found. But it also solidified the truth he had always known. His true family was the old bear who had saved him, the forest that had nurtured him. When it was time for Finn to return to his life in the city, he knew it wouldn't be a permanent goodbye. He would always come back to the forest, to Barnaby, to the place where his story truly began. He carried the wild within him, a quiet strength and a unique perspective that the city dwellers could never fully comprehend. He was a bridge between two worlds, a testament to the unlikely bonds of friendship and the enduring power of love, found in the most unexpected of places. And as he walked back towards the distant skyline, he knew that a part of his heart would always remain in the silent, watchful embrace of the ancient woods and his old bear. Lastly, a young boy decided to leave. He listened few pieces of advice the old bear, Barnaby, might have taught Finn. 1. Listen to the forest, little one. The trees whisper secrets if you have the patience to hear them. 2. Kindness is a strength, not a weakness. Even the smallest creature deserves your respect. 3. The wild provides, but never take more than you need. Gratitude keeps the balance. 4. Fear what you don't understand, but never let it close your mind to learning. Your heart will guide you, Finn. Trust its compass, even when the path ahead is unclear.